The next article, the fifth article of faith I wanted to talk about is that of divine decree, also known as qadar. So what is qadar? It basically means that God knows everything. God knows the past, God knows the present, God knows the future. He knows everything that would happen, what decision you would make. So I'm not talking, and so you might be thinking, well, what about free will? This doesn't conflict with free will. People still have free will. Human beings still have the decision to make choices. However, what's unique about this is God knows the decision you will make. So it is still your choice. It was your choice to come to SGU. But God knew you would make that decision. And God knows that had you gone to Ross, how your life would have turned out instead. Or if you had decided to go to law school, how your life would have turned out instead. God knows exactly what would happen if X happened or Y happened. He knows the past, He knows the future, and He knows the present. He is all-knowing. That is one of the attributes of God. And the final article of faith that I wanted to talk about is that of the Day of Judgment. So Muslims believe that there will be a resurrection after we all die. After all, God created us in the first place, so how hard is it for Him to resurrect us a second time? And so, as Muslims, we don't actually know what it is. Only that knowledge is only with God. But what Muslims believe is justice will be served on that day. And there exists the concept of heaven and hell. And so to talk about this, I'm just going to briefly talk about Islam and what it considers to be the purpose of life. So everything has a purpose in its creation. Everything around us has a purpose in its creation. For example, this chair right here, it serves a purpose. It serves a purpose for you being able to sit in it. This shirt right here, it serves a purpose to cover me and to clothe me. So everything around us serves a purpose. So obviously, the human being, the complex, unique creation that it is, has a purpose in its life. And so what is the purpose of life? It is first and foremost to realize and acknowledge and come to the conclusion that there is a God, that there is a creator, and that you have been created from someone created you. And it's to come to the conclusion that there is a creator of the heavens and the earth. And then based on that knowledge, based on that conclusion of your own free will, because angels don't have free will. They know that there's a creator, they've been told. But as human beings, based on your own free will, is to come to the understanding that there exists a God. And then based on that knowledge, it is to worship Him. That is the purpose of life according to a Muslim. It is to acknowledge God and then worship Him based on that. So, based on that, based on the purpose of life, where does salvation lie in Islam? Do we as human beings deserve paradise, for example? And the short answer of that is no. No human being truly deserves paradise. Not Moses, not Jesus, not Muhammad. And they were the best of examples. None of them truly deserves paradise. So how do we attain paradise? The real answer is salvation in Islam relies exclusively on the mercy of God. That is where salvation relies. And so the way we attain the mercy of God is that we serve the purpose of life. That we acknowledge we have the belief of Islam, or we have the belief in the oneness of God, and then based on that, we worship God. And so Islam is a religion that bases salvation on belief and works. You can't just believe in God and then based on that and go live a horrendous life, become a ridiculous serial killer or murderer or something like that. No, Islamically speaking, it is a combination of the two. And so when I say worship God, what do I mean? There's two different aspects to worship. There's the idea, there's the religious worship, and then there's the ethical worship. The religious good and the ethical good. And so what is the ethical good? It's everything you do. It's a form of worship. Every single action that you do, you can make it for the sake of God, and it is worship. So when I say worship, don't think just praying at home is worship or becoming a monk is worship. No. Islam doesn't ask you to give up your life for the sake of everything else. So when I say worship everything you do, if you do it for the intention of pleasing God, it becomes a form of worship. Let me give you an example. Let's take an action as simple as going to the gym. If you go to the gym, what is your intention when you go to the gym? And this would be the reason that would be considered a form of worship. If you go to the gym, and there could be numerous good, righteous reasons. For example, male or female, if you go to the gym so that you can look attractive for your spouse, to preserve their chastity, then this becomes a form of worship for you. But if you go to the gym so that you can rip a polo and girls will look at you, it's probably not a form of worship. Similarly, smiling in the face of your brother can be considered a form of worship. Every good action that you do, having good manners, can be a form of worship. Eventually, eating and drinking can become a form of worship. Going to medical school, in numerous good deeds that you can get from going to medical school, from having the intention of serving mankind, for having the intention of making a financial income to support your family, or being a good role model for your siblings. These all would come under the form of worship. So in Islam, studying pathology can be considered a form of worship. The hundreds of hours that you put into medical school could be considered a form of worship. But similarly, there is also religious worship as well, in addition to the ethical worship. And so Muslims have this duty for religious worship as well. And this is to do it according to the ways found in the Quran and the prophetic traditions of the Prophet Muhammad. And amongst them are the 5 pillars of Islam. And we went over the first pillar of Islam, which is the testimony of faith. And now the second pillar of Islam is that of actual prayer, actual salah. The actual prayer that we do, that you see Muslims doing 5 times a day. A Muslim cleanses himself before he prays, and he faces Mecca, and he prays in a way that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, prayed. And this is considered a fundamental part of the religion. It is a personal communication between you and God. And it is a prayer that you do 5 times a day to show your thankfulness to God. Similarly, that doesn't mean that there's no other form of prayer. Indeed, talking to God is a form of prayer. You can be driving your car and make a short little prayer, "Oh God, give me that parking spot." That's a type of prayer as well. And so there are different types, in Islam there are different words for these types of prayers. You have dua, which means supplication, asking God for something. "Oh God, give me good health, give me an A," whatever. Forgive me. And then there's the type of worship where you have established prayer. The third pillar in Islam is that of charity. Every Muslim gives 2.5% of his charity to those less fortunate. It is a means of purification for your wealth. The Arabic word for charity is zakah, which literally means purification. And so charity is something that is highly stressed. And similarly, it's based on your intentions. If you give $100 because you want the people to think that you're generous, versus if you give 50 cents out of pure sincerity, 50 cents out of pure sincerity is better than that. Better than the $100. And so it's based on your intention. And the fourth pillar of Islam is fasting the month of Ramadan. And that just ended about 20 odd days ago. And it's where Muslims fast from sun up to sundown. And it requires them to abstain from food, drink, and sex for the duration of the day. It helps in creating God consciousness. Every religion pretty much has some form of worship, fasting involved in it. And it really teaches one self-restraint and patience. And the fifth and final pillar of Islam is that of Hajj, known as the pilgrimage to Mecca. And this is something that is required upon a Muslim once in his or her lifetime. If they are financially, mentally, and physically able to do it. It commemorates the tradition of Prophet Abraham as he built the Kaaba, which as you can see here with his son. So millions of Muslims from all over the world travel to Mecca annually to perform the Hajj. And so that pretty much concludes my talk in Islam in terms of what is the theology of a Muslim. I'm gonna wrap up in the next 2 or 3 minutes. But before we conclude, I just wanted to take a minute to state a brief word on where Islam stands in terms of terrorism. So, who speaks for a religion? It's usually it should be considered the mainstream majority people should speak for a religion. For example, the KKK in the U.S. is a Christian organization, but we all know that it doesn't represent Christianity. Similarly, Al-Qaeda is a very small fraction of Muslims in the world, a very tiny percentage. And they shouldn't be considered to represent Islam. And so, oftentimes you often hear people refer to the violent verses in the Quran. And as a Muslim, I believe in those verses wholeheartedly. But let me tell you something about those verses that tell people about the verses that people refer to in the Quran. They were revealed during the times of war. And so Islam is a religion that fully gives you the right to defend yourself. And if someone is attacking your house, you are allowed to fight back. You have the option to turn the other cheek, but at the same time, Islam is a religion that fully allows one to defend him or herself and his or her family. And so, let me give you some final thinking points before I conclude. A lot of people say, well, Muslims kill Christians and Jews wherever they see them or anything like that. But that's ridiculous. According to the Islamic Sharia, according to Islamic law, I'm allowed to marry a Christian or Jewish woman. So does it make sense that I would have to kill her if I'm allowed to marry her? It doesn't make sense at all, does it? Similarly, if someone is, for example, a Christian living in an Islamic state who pays the jizya, who lives in the Sharia, according to the Christian law, they're allowed to drink alcohol. But Muslims we're prohibited from drinking alcohol. So if the Christian pays the jizya and lives as a rightful citizen in an Islamic state, he or she is guaranteed that right to drink alcohol in his or her home. But if a Muslim is found drinking alcohol, he will be lashed. And so non-Muslims are guaranteed their rights in an Islamic state. Similarly, there are numerous prophetic traditions that clearly prohibit murder and suicide. Suicide and murder are completely forbidden in Islam. Even the strongest scholars of Saudi Arabia condemn suicide bombers. And so, does Islam condone terrorism? Absolutely not. It condemns it. And this brings me to the conclusion of my talk, Islam 101. I thank you the MSA thanks you for coming out to this talk. We really appreciate it. I put my email address up here in case anyone wants to get in touch with me, floridabilal@gmail.com. I actually also brought a few flyers, and I have some Qur'ans if anyone wants any. They're in English. And I thank you for coming out. If you have any questions or anything whatsoever, feel free to come talk to me or talk to any of the Muslims that you know in your classes. Thank you.